All right, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Brushback Baseball Podcast. We are continuing our series, practicing our social distancing and using our remote episodes. So thanks for bearing with us as I continue in my garage here. So if you hear some noise in the background, we apologize, but thank you, guys. No, we have a really special guest today, and who's a part of the Dodger family, and it's only right with David being such a huge Dodger fan, it's only right for him to be able to look at what he wore, of course, to introduce our guest today. So, but before I turn it over to him, I just wanted to give a quick update. If you guys haven't noticed, our hats arrived. I know we announced it on Instagram, and a few of you guys have actually reached out, and we're going to be sending those out as soon as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to make that quick little announcement. So, without further delay, I'll turn it over to David.
Sure. So today we have basically somebody who's been involved in every Dodger memory that I've basically had in my formative years. I was born in 1980, and, the 88 World Series was pinnacle, and we have today Boyd Robertson, who is known as the booth boss, was literally Vin Scully's right-hand man for 28 years. Before that was with Chick Hearn, and I can't introduce you as well as I think you did just in a few minutes yesterday and how you got started. So why don't we get with how you got started with LA Media?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you guys and everybody that's listening or going to listen. I started out in college in 1973. I know that's a long time ago. When I was a junior in college, my roommate and I played college golf for a small university back in southeastern Oklahoma. He got to be a caddy for a professional golfer, not a famous one, but a professional golfer in Fort Worth, Texas. And I wanted to do that too, but the caddy master at Colonial in Fort Worth said, we do not need any more of college caddies. We've filled our quota. However, ABC Sports is televising the Colonial Tournament Saturday and Sunday, the PGA Tour Colonial Tournament. Would you like to be a gopher and a runner for $15 a day? Your own transportation, your own food, whatever, but you'll get to work for the people at ABC Sports that are telecasting the event. I said, I'm in. First of all, that I got to cut class. Second of all, I got to be in a sport that I loved since I was 12 years old. And here I am, knowing who these golfers were, and not knowing them personally, but working for production people and technical people that knew how to put on a telecast. And that's really how I got started, because I loved every second of it. And I told my parents immediately, I said, I know I'm getting a business degree, but this is something I think I would like to do when I graduate from college, and that's basically what I did.
So how did you make the move out? How long did you work at ABC in Texas?
Well, I worked all over the United States for ABC Sports because I got my start there, yes, but they started giving me more work, freelance work, and then they started paying for me to fly to different events. And so I became a higher paid gopher and a runner, and then I became a stage manager and a graphics coordinator for Monday Night Football in 1977. And then, yes, I got to work in the booth with Howard Cosell, Frank Gifford, and Don Meredith. That was my year, 77, to be their stage manager. And what an interesting, different, fun, terrifying, all kinds of things going on every Monday night because of just the way people liked and did not like Howard Cosell and how they liked Don Meredith and steady Frank Gifford and so forth. They all treated me well, and I enjoyed working for the producer, Dennis Lewin, learning a lot from him, and Chet Forty, the director, who was ABC's #1 director at the time. And it just got going more and more and more with golf events and a World Cup skiing overseas, the Indy 500, the Kentucky Derby, all those big events I got to be parts of over 3.5 years, from 1976 through June of 1979. And then they told me, meaning the guys who hire the young kids out of college who want to be producers and directors of the future. One of the main guys, Chuck Howard, who was one of the three big guys at ABC Sports under a name of Roone Arledge. He was the overlord of ABC Sports, and they had most of the sporting events. So Chuck Howard told me that he doesn't see me as a producer director at ABC Sports in the future. You can work as long as you want to for us, but you're not going to make it through to the next level. So as hurt as I was on that, and I felt bad. I felt like a failure, like everybody else would. I knew that other people had been told that before me, who had a better college education, had connections and things like that. But I took that as, okay, I'll keep working for a little while longer, and then I'll work on my resume. And I did. Some of the directors, staff directors that were there at ABC, put me in touch with a director who shot television commercials based in Burbank. So I went and interviewed with him in May of '79 while I was still working for ABC, and he hired me as his producer, and we produced commercials that would end up on sporting events that I used to work on, car commercials, Mr. Coffee commercials, and things like that. So I was doing that, and I was still working in the sports business as a freelance guy. We're now into the 80s, and then cable TV started in 1985 with Prime Ticket, and I started there as a freelance stage manager, production assistant, and that's when I started working with Chick Hearn, because we were able to, Prime Ticket was able to get some Laker telecasts, and so either I was his PA, sometimes stage manager because of the pecking order, and then I became his full-time stage manager for about 15 years until his death. And he's the connection that I had with Vin Scully, where when I was asked in in '89, a couple of months before the baseball season started, I was asked by a producer or director, "Hey, we have an opening to work with Vin Scully, his stage manager, to work Dodger road games and a few home games." We only did about 50 or 55 games a season back in '89. So I went to my Laker producer, and I told him what was going on. And then I went to Chick Hearn, and Chick immediately said, "You need to do this. We'll find somebody to replace you when you're not able to do Laker basketball. And you need to go work with Vin Scully. He's one of the best announcers ever. That'll be good for you." And so he encouraged me, and I ended up taking the job and said, "Yes, I will do it." So when the baseball season started in '89, remember the Dodgers were the '88 world champions. So they were on top of the baseball world with Gibson and Hershiser and all those guys, and a great team and great people, Mickey Hatcher, all those guys. So I was the rookie, even though I'd been in the television business. I was the rookie around those guys and the production team, and especially around Vin.
So you're telling me that you're the reason why the Dodgers haven't won since as soon as you started in '89?
That's right. I'm the curse.
Well, you know what
I'm the living curse.
Yeah.
You know what they said? Don Mattingly started with the Yankees in '82 as a rookie and retired in '95, which happened to be most of their World Series throughout. So
yeah.
That's fine.
By the way, Don,
go ahead.
By the way, you mentioned Don Mattingly. It was a pleasure to work with Don and be around Don while he was a coach for Joe Torre and the Dodger manager.
He seems like one of the more laid-back guys out there, just generally.
Yeah, as a player, he would seem like a really cool guy, a manager to play for.
I believe that.
So you've really worked with forget just the Los Angeles market, in sports history, two of the biggest names. How are they different, and also how are they similar in what they did their work?
I'll take the similar first. The similar in whatever age they were dedicated to their craft, even if they didn't feel well or they had been on a long road trip. They plowed through it, and they did their routine of getting ready for every game day after day. So when I would see Chick at the Forum or at Staples Center, you could tell he was prepared for that night, and he had questions leading into that night about the matchup between the Lakers and whoever the team was. Same way with Vin. For a 7:00 game, 7:10 game, Vin would come in to the press box and into TV booth 1 around 3:30, 3:45, depending on traffic, as we all know. He would come into the booth. He would be prepared from reading and going on computers and finding different kinds of information to prepare himself for that particular night. And that's what was impressive about those guys, that they consistently did it day in, day out, home, road, those kinds of things.
So for somebody like me who, and I don't know all the details that kind of go into, putting out a broadcast like that, where did, what was your level of involvement in preparation, in helping guys like Vin and Chick, get ready for the broadcast?
Oh, I'll take Chick first. Well, I would go to the producer, Jerry Romano, at the time. And so I would ask Jerry, what promos do we have? What copy does he need? And Jerry would have that for me at 3:30 in the afternoon for a 7:40 tip. And we would go over all of it. There would be updates. There would be changes, new sponsors in, old sponsors out, those kinds of things that Chick would have to look at before we hit the broadcast. And if he didn't like the copy, he could modify it or change it or update it or say it a different way. So I was the conduit to give him or show him the copy that he would have to read of different kind of sponsorships that he would have to get into the broadcast. Same way with Vin. I would get that information from the producer and then bring it in to Vin and either write it differently, or he would say, that's fine, we can use that. That would just start the day. And then once the day started with Vin, there may be some information, statistical information, before the stats person got to the booth that he or Rob Minchell, who was our lighting director, our cameraman, we would look at our computers to look certain things up that he had a question, because he would have information prepared on all the players and the coaches. It might be a lot of information, it might be a little bit of information, and he may not even get that information in. So he might be looking at something or researching something when all the statistics would come in into the booth, called the game notes and the stat pack. He would look those over, and then he would start asking some questions, and we would assist him with that. Rob would take something, I would take something else, and we would give it to him as we would get that information, and he would write it down, or we would print it out, or whatever the case may be, and he might or might not use it for the telecast. It's just courting if it worked during the telecast. It wasn't an intrusion, because everybody wants to sit at home and watch the game and watch the score and hear his voice of how he interprets the game.
Right. And imagine you have to react pretty quick, but I'm sure nowadays, with everything just being able to type up stuff during the broadcast and doing it that quickly live, is it quicker now than it was back in the 80s when you started?
Yeah, it was quicker. It is quicker, and I'll give you an example with holding up my phone. Is Vin would be talking about something. Let's say it was about World War II, because he's from that era. And he would bring up World War II and talk about the sacrifices that everybody made. And he would have a story about maybe a player or a coach's grandfather that served on a certain ship and blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, he's talking about this ship. I would Google that ship, and I would find some information about that ship, and then I would hand him my phone, and he would look at it while he was still talking to the audience and also saying, ball 3 a little outside, and he would look at that, and then he might pick up something from my phone that I found that he would add to that story. Wow. That's how good he was at multitasking, bringing all that information in and then disseminating that information out to the broadcast.
Wow. Yeah, that solidifies the fact that I would not be good at being a broadcaster like that. I can't multitask, so it's kudos to him for that.
Yeah, for sure.
That also tells you how highly trained he trained himself over the years as more information became available to them.
Right.
As the decades went by, how he disseminated it and then prepared, and he would do that every day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah, I remember one of my favorite anecdotes, or one of his favorite stories that he would tell would be every D-Day. He would go over the sacrifice that the guys on D-Day would do. And the last few years, I'm a U.S. history buff, so I love the way he would tell that. But I could sense the frustration in his voice with people not recognizing that. That was one of the only times I ever heard Vin really get emotional about stuff. Yes. But loved, just how he would intertwine everyday life and the life that we live with.
Well, to add to that, I would hang on his every word when he would talk about D-Day or a D-Day story or World War II related story. I hung on it so much that not too many years ago, my 2 kids and I went to Europe, and we specifically went to France, and we took the train out to Normandy, and we walked on Omaha Beach, and we went to the American Cemetery, and we went to an area called Point du Hoc, because that is a great generation, was a great generation, and we should never forget them. So that had a large impact on me, and it also had a large impact of my parents being from that era, how they told me about World War II.
What do you think was, thinking back to Vin's favorite kind of stories? I love the Jackie Robinson ice skating racing story that he'd tell a ton. And he also loved to key in his last few years about Madison Bumgarner dating Madison Bumgarner. Which one of kind of his stories was your favorite that you'd hear over and over, and it'd be just as fun anytime you'd hear it?
The Jackie Robinson story, or any Jackie Robinson story about how he handled the way he was treated, meaning Jackie as a baseball player, and on top of that, how much his wife Rachel, who's still with us, how much she put up with, and Roy Campanella's stories, and the Don Newcomb stories, how much they put up with back in the late 40s and early 50s. He was a young Irish kid, and witnessing all this and being kind of in it and watching it. And it was incredible to hear those stories because we weren't there. I was born in 1952. So, yes, the Brooklyn Dodgers were going big then, and they had wonderful teams then and wonderful players. But we weren't there. We can only read about it. But Vin gives us the walking museum, as I like to call it. He gives us his perspective because he was in it. He lived it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had a question though. When I was looking, I realized I used to watch the Dodger games back when I was a kid, because you had the Angels and the Dodgers were on channel 63 and 64 back then. So it was either the Angels or Dodgers that I was watching. But every time I watched, I realized that Vin was in there solo, kind of the only broadcaster, and you were sitting there right next to him. Did that put any more probably a lot more work for you to help Vin out a little bit more? Now I feel like nowadays you're always having multiple broadcasters in it who can bounce and talk ideas off of each other. Did you feel that there was any more pressure, not pressure, but more for you to do to kind of keep him going?
It depended on the game. Sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't. There was 3 of us in the booth. Rob Minchell, whom I mentioned, who was the high home cameraman, he had his computer going. I had mine, my phone going, and access to Rob's computer because it was next to me. And our statistician, who the last 10 years that worked with Vin, is named Brian Hagan, and he was part of the team. So we all three had access to different things, and I would turn around to Brian. I'd say, why don't you take so-and-so, and I'll take this part of it. So he may take the first half of the story. I may take the last half of the story. Or if it was statistical, I would tell Brian, why don't you do that, and I'll do something else that Ben is talking about. So we all had this little dance going on, if you will, of feeding him information. And we never, ever got upset if he never used it on the air, because we knew down the road, the next game, the next inning, the next pitch, it would be something else.
You could pull from that too.
Exactly right. We would pull from that, and he would use it, and and that made our day of going forward, just doing the research and listening to him and the camera guys. Obviously, besides the guys in the mobile unit and the women in the mobile unit, they're listening to Vin because he's telling a story, and the cameramen are trying to think, okay, where is he leading us? He's leading us probably to a person that's on the field or in the dugout or something like that. And that's what made it fascinating to work with Vin, of where his stories were going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So many moving parts to putting together, a broadcast. That's amazing. Really cool to hear.
You were part of Vin's team. There was a separate team for Ross, and then later Steiner and Monday, right? They have
right. So when I worked with Vin, he would go over to radio for the middle three innings, and Ross Porter or Don Drysdale, when he was with us, they would do the middle three innings. But I stayed in the TV booth. And so I worked with Ross, and I worked with Don Drysdale, both guys great to work with. And so I did that for many years, and then Ross retired, and then we know what happened to Don Drysdale, which was unfortunate. A great guy to work with, and I had worked with him in the 70s with Don, because he was an announcer also for ABC Sports. So I got to work with him and for shows called Superstars and Super Teams. He was one of the announcers, one of the hosts for those shows back on ABC Sports.
I actually wanted to cover Don Drysdale because I know it was so integral to your early years over there. That probably had to be one of the toughest experiences ever. That was in Montreal, right? I believe.
It was in Montreal. My recollection is earlier in that week, we had finished a homestand, and Roy Campanella had passed away. Mm-hmm. And then we got on the plane and flew to Montreal to get ready for a road trip. And he passed away technically, I guess, that Friday night. But we didn't know about it till the next afternoon, Montreal time, on Saturday, and we still had to work. We still had to do a baseball game, and I'm still amazed that Vin. Yes, he knew Don very well. He remained professional, and he kept it simple and told the fans when it was time to tell the fans. When Peter O'Malley gave him the word through Bill DeLury, the traveling secretary, that the families had been notified, that Vin could tell the audience what had happened. And we had to carry on. We had to do the games, and I think we went to Philadelphia after that, and then we went on to Shea Stadium in New York to finish out the road trip, and that was difficult for everybody, but the show went on. And we made it through the best we could before we came back home.
Tyler, so let's move on to kind of Vin as a person, as a friend. Mm-hmm. You obviously had a very strict line between professionalism, but as a human being, what can you say, that people see, but that you experienced?
Well, the couple of the experiences is with the public that get to come in or got to come in to see him in the booth, and the other is experiences with me. Since I was the young guy, the first few years, yes, I was nervous, and yes, I made mistakes. In fact, the first mistake I made was probably the first game, and I told my producer and director, I said, I gave him some information, and it's incorrect. I need to tell him that it was incorrect during the commercial break. And they said, okay. And I don't even remember what it was. Maybe it was a wrong score, or who knows what it was. So we were in Cincinnati. The inning ends, and I looked at him, and I did one of these. In other words, take your headset off. So he took his headset off, and he says, what's up? And I said, you know that information that I gave you, blah, 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 about this and so forth? It was incorrect. I made a mistake. It's my fault. And he kind of looked down, and he didn't say anything, which I thought was for about a minute. But it was probably for a few seconds. And I said, okay, my career's over with here. Be prepared. Be prepared. And he looked at me, and he turned his head, and he said, welcome to the club, which meant, and you guys know what that means. It meant he's human. He has made mistakes. He doesn't want to make the mistake. It's just like a ground ball to a rookie shortstop. Don't hit it to me, because I'll make a mistake and I'm in the World Series and I'm going to throw it away, or I'm going to hit an error. So that really helped me when he said that to me, that, oh, he's giving me a chance here. He wants me to succeed. He wants me to have confidence in how I support him. So that I've told that story many times, and I'll continue to tell that because it's good for young people to hear. Don't be afraid to fail. We all fail. It's just on what level we fail on, and not maybe repeat that failure over and over, so we can go forward with confidence and things like that. So that helped me a lot. And as the years went by, we became friends. He always asked me about my kids. He's watched my kids grow up and seen them come into the booth. He always has asked them what they're doing, how they're doing. And as I've asked about his kids and his grandkids and so forth with he and his wife. So it really took off to be a wonderful relationship, because he cares. And he cares about all the crew, not just me, because I was there by him for many, many days in a row, but the producer, the audio guy, the utility person that would set up the equipment and things like that. He always had time for them, and I watched that. I witnessed that, and I would appreciate that too, that he would do that. And I would have crew people come up to me to say, he just started talking to me in the hallway after he had dinner, and asked me how I was doing and how's work going and things like that. So many times he would do that to the crew, because he knew why we were all there and our function, and he wanted us to succeed just like he wanted me to succeed, and all the camera people and technicians and producers and directors to try to put on the best telecast we could put on. So
that's awesome to hear.
It really touches my heart every time I think of it, that he took the time to do that. And as far as fans were concerned, when they had the privilege of doing a meet and greet with him in TV booth 1, or maybe it was in a little room in the press box when he was so busy he had meet and greets going on in 2 different places, I would help the PR people and James Mims, who was out in front of the press box. We would do a little dance before the game and coordinate these meet and greets. So he treated those people, yes, he knew it was their first time to come into the booth and first time for them to meet them. And there would be times where I would go to them and bring them into the booth, and I would tell them, now remember, just call him Vin, don't call him Mr. Scully. And they would look at me with this frightened look on their face, and they would say, as an example, but my dad told me to call him Mr. Scully, or that's all. I out of respect, I have to call him Mr. Scully. I said, okay. So someone would call him Mr. Scully, and he would correct them and say, it's just Vin, call me Vin. And he would take the time and ask them about their lives and what they were doing. And if they would bring little kids in, do you play baseball? What position do you play? Are you having fun? Enjoy the game, things like that. Whatever time he could give them, he would speak directly to them, and he would remember their names after he got introduced to them when he would say goodbye to them.
Wow.
And that's the way he conducted his life, and he still does to this day. I don't get to talk to him very much. I email him or I'll text him. We'll talk every once in a while, but I know he's doing well, and he's missed by everybody. I get asked about him a lot from visiting announcers or crew people. Hey, when's the last time you talked to Vin? And I'll say the holidays and things like that. So he's to have a career like that for 67 years. No actor does that. No politician does that. It's rare to be around a person like that. But he was very steady, very consistent on everyday life, and his attitude was always positive. Even if he didn't feel good, you wouldn't necessarily know it, or he had a lot of personal things going on, you wouldn't know it, and he would conduct his day like it was any other day.
What was it like for you wrapping up that last year? At that point.
Yeah, 2016. Well, Rob Minchell and I and Brian Hagan, remember my buddies in the booth. We all knew it was going to be difficult. Difficult personally because it was a long goodbye, and then difficult to try to shuttle with the Dodger organization and the other organizations that were there visiting, because they all wanted to see him. Whether it was owners of teams. The Milwaukee Brewers owner came in, celebrities, Big Papi, the baseball player, things like that, just to try to get him in at a time where we could do our work, he could eat before the game, but yet still have time for as many people as possible. He didn't turn anybody down. He didn't want to turn anybody down. I remember our bullpen coach for many years, Mark Cressy. He and his wife were there either on the last day or the next to last day, and they had contacted me because I've known them for a long time. And I told Vin, I said, Mark Cressy and his wife are outside, and he had already done 7 or 8 meet and greets on that day. I said, would you like for me to put them in the copy machine room, which was over by the entrance of the press box? He said, I'll be there in a few minutes, just put them in there. So I went out and I got them, collected them, and put them in the coffee machine room where you could have a little bit of quietness. Because Mark had spent many, many years with the Dodgers. He was part of the '88 World Series, and good man, good family man. And so I visited him for a little while, and then I said, here he comes, have a wonderful visit. And then I left them just so they could have a one-on-one with him, and I went back to the booth. So it was a long goodbye. It was a happy and sad goodbye. I really had 2 goodbyes. The home game, his last home game, was a goodbye. But when we got on the plane, and then we eventually ended up in San Francisco for his goodbye, his very last game. And by the way, the San Francisco Giants treated him so well and catered to all of his needs and some things he didn't even think of by how they treated him and how they honored him and the fans honored him and so forth. So it was wonderful to see that. And that was the sad time when he was writing in his book after the game had ended, and he was writing in his scorebook to finish it, and he closed his scorebook. That was a huge ending for me. Wow. Was it sad? Yeah, it was sad. And of course, his wife said, "Now don't start crying." And I put my hand over my mouth like that, and I said, "Sandy, I'm not trying to, but I'm very happy for you, and I'm very happy for him, even though the journey has ended for all of us." So, yeah, it was. I hugged him goodbye. Couldn't say anything. It was that emotional, and I didn't need to say anything. So I mean, I'm getting emotional about it now because we do miss him. Fans missed him. And you saw his last day at Dodger Stadium when our director Dustin Denny was shooting people in the crowd, and they were openly weeping because this was part of their family because they had listened to him for so long. We all have, and how much they were going to miss him because goodbye is kind of final.
Yeah, and to have it happen on a Charlie Culberson home run to have that walk off and go to the playoff. I think they clinched that game too. So just to have the whole experience was really great.
Well, there's footage of me sitting there watching the Charlie Culberson home run unfold, and I'm shaking my head and not saying anything, and thinking to myself, "This cannot be happening. This I know what's about to happen. Vin's about to say goodbye to the fans, but this just added to it. This script hasn't been written, and this is unbelievable." Wow. So I just kept shaking my head because that's all I know. I knew what to do.
Probably couldn't believe what you're witnessing right there.
Yeah, that's right. As Jack Buck said in '88 when he was on radio, and Gibson. And he says, "I don't believe what I just saw." Yeah. Well, that's what was in my that was what was in my mind, and then what was about to unfold with Vin saying goodbye with his wife standing there.
Wow,
incredible,
amazing. So you had Vin. The transition happens with it in an odd way. Very similar story. Very young guy with Joe Davis coming in and Oral. What can you say about what you see now with those guys, which is I love, especially with social media, their dynamic, that they're in the car on the way back from road trips, just goofing around, doing whatever. So what can you say about that dynamic with this changeover?
Well, it shows, first of all, those little snippets, it shows that they're human and it's just not all baseball, all serious all the time. They do have a good time together. They bring two different personalities in the booth. Obviously, Joe is the young, prepared announcer. Oral's the longtime veteran who's got a great personality, and he had that from day one when I met him in '89. And they feed off each other. They tease each other. You hear it on the air. You hear it off the air. And then Rick Krajewski, who's our statistician in the booth, he's very good at statistics and numbers and kind of digging at them every once in a while when they don't get the number just right, or no, I said it this way, I'm giving it to you that way. And then I'll chime in every once in a while. Oh, is that what you want? Oh, okay. Well, we can do that. Since I'm the booth boss and I procure them things with the production assistant that helps me. Thank goodness we have production assistants because that's where I came from a long time ago. So they're a lot of fun to work with. They make the day pass very well. They love the game of baseball like the rest of us, and. Nomar's in there too. When Oral takes some days off, I enjoy that. So
that was the guy I grew up watching.
I'm looking forward to it. I wish Sunday was going to be happening at Anaheim Stadium this Sunday, the 22nd. It's not. I've got to text them, and I haven't talked to them since Christmas. So it's time to get on the phone and say hello to them. But hopefully they're doing as well as everybody else is.
That kind of leads me into a question I wanted to ask for you is what do you think of what's going on with baseball right now and the postponement and everything? I mean, for somebody like you, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it got me in two ways. I was working Clipper basketball this past winter and up until last week. Okay. I work on the Clipper telecast, the pregame, halftime, and postgame show as a stage manager, and as you know, that ended, and then baseball has right now temporarily been put on hold. So I've never been in that situation. I've been in a situation where baseball went on strike for a little while. But, we didn't lose the whole season, but it was just odd, and we cranked it back up. Well, this is the unknown, And it is very odd for all of the crew people that I've talked to, and how we just have to survive it, like all of us, getting out when we can. We miss it. I miss it. And I was hoping to do this for a few more years, baseball that is, and basketball, before I retire.
Okay. Yeah, this is such a weird time, and me as a fan, it's tough. I miss baseball. I'm somebody who goes and I check the box score every single box score, and I just look at everything, and now I'm kind of like, oh, what do I do now?
And that's been part of your routine. Everybody else that's a baseball fan or a sports fan, that's been part of their routine, and so our routine has been taken away from us, and we're kind of struggling with that. We're kind of fighting with that internally, and we just have to learn to live with it.
Yep. Well, we'll get back to it.
Yes, hang in there, guys.
Sooner rather than later.
Who knows? We might start the baseball season with the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium. You never know.
We talked about that at our last episode, which is kind of funny.
But. Yeah, we had an agent that came on last episode, and to hear it from their end of the business with the players. Very similar. It's the whole world that just stopped. So it'll get back, but
it will.
Do you think the All-Star game will still be at Dodger Stadium this year, or do you think?
I think if the season was wiped out, maybe they'll push it to next year. That's just a personal opinion, not based on any factual information. If we can have a semblance of a season, I don't know, 80, 90, 100 games, then I think they would have the All-Star game. But I don't know if it's going to turn around that quickly enough to where it may not. I don't know. I'm not going to get my hopes up until somebody above my pay grade starts giving me hope on that, and that's from our government, and then trickles down to Major League Baseball and the commissioner, and on and on and on. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that we will have a baseball season in some form this year.
I was particularly excited to see the changes that were coming to Dodger Stadium this year, because they were just basically opening the whole thing up. Did they do anything from your technical standpoint in the booth to do anything back of house?
No, they have not done that. We haven't been informed on that. If they did, they weren't going to modify that level in the Vin Scully press box at all. Years ago, when I say years ago, probably 5 years ago now, they were thinking, and it may just still be a thought, they were thinking about taking the press box level and moving it up to the front or reserve. But I haven't heard that talk because they wanted to improve the outfield and add the elevators on the wings, on the side, on the curl of the stadium. So I know that's been going on, and so I hope to see it sometime this year, because I only have seen it from afar, and there had no reason for me to go to Dodger Stadium this winter, even though I've driven by it a few times.
It'll be good when it does. So, how often do you travel with the team now?
I do not travel with the team now. When Vin ended his run in 2016, I stopped traveling then, and that's okay with me. If Spectrum said we want you to travel, I would. But it gives me more time off now that I'm getting older and things like that. I've been on quite a few buses and planes and trains and things like that. So that the 2016 was a good year to cap it and to not travel.
Well, I hope you're getting on the golf course now more often.
When I can, I'll get out and hit it sideways and just get some fresh air like we all need, and I'll probably play golf when the rain stops.
Yeah, I know everything's this whole rain the last 2 weeks. I don't know if we're kind of going crazy here in Southern California. I can't remember seeing two straight weeks of rain.
That's very odd, very unusual, but we'll take it.
Yeah, we will take it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what did you have, Tyler?
no, I was just going to say, I think that answers kind of all the questions I had. I don't know if you have any others, David.
No, I mean, you lived, you know, every experience that I've in my cognitive history that I had, like the Piazza trade, how that came down. And that was, right before a game. You guys had to prep. You didn't even know that was. Todd Zeal going with Piazza and Gareth Sheffield coming back is the main thing. But how do you prep for like trade deadline and kind of all that stuff that hits?
Well, we have to let it unfold, and when the PR people tell us, then we if it might be 2 PM, it might be when we're home before we get to the stadium, or it might be okay. They took him out of the lineup. He was in the lineup, and the trade deadline is approaching. There might be something to that, and then we might find out after the game that they pulled him out of the lineup, and yes, he got traded. So it is on the fly a lot of the time. And of course, now and we're watching MLB Network or ESPN in our booth because we have a monitor for that. We're watching our computers and we're monitoring that too. So sometimes that comes out before the team's able to tell us. But almost 100% of the time, the team will let us know when want us to when they want the announcers to talk about it and release it.
So you're kind of at the mercy of the PR team. As soon as they kind of release it to you is when you guys are able to go ahead and talk about it.
We are. I mean, you could speculate about it and say ESPN is reporting whatever that might be.
Okay.
Or MLB Network is reporting that trade's happening.
Okay.
Even if it's not a Dodger trade or anything like that. But once we get 2 or 3 sources, non-Dodger stuff, once we get 2 or 3 sources, then we usually go with it. But if it's a Dodger one, we let the PR people let us know.
Got it.
Because that's their job, and we let them do that, and they do that very well.
Seems like most baseball communication happens on Twitter more so than any other. How do you incorporate all of that? Because it's so fast moving with Twitter,
Well, we're with the game going on. Both announcers are watching it. We're watching it, and if it's a good source, and maybe you've seen it somewhere else, they might use some of it, or they might stay away from it. It just depends on what it is, the source, and what they're talking about, and how they're talking about it. So, as you know, you have to be careful with that going forward, especially with the structure of how we disseminate the news. And that's what it is. It's sports news, but it is news.
Sounds good.
Yeah, David got me to download Twitter again. I kind of was off social media for a while, and then he's like, I get all my news, and it's the quickest is on Twitter, and so I downloaded it. Now I'm checking constantly.
Well, it just is. Ken Rosenthal's on there. John Heyman.
Yeah.
Everybody is, and then you get the fake Ken Rosenthal trades. Like Mookie Betts traded to Baltimore. So, well.
Yes. Yeah, the John Heymans. My sources tell me that so and so and so and so is going to get traded any moment now. Okay, well, why don't we wait till that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. As a baseball fan, why don't we kind of wrap up with this? As a baseball fan yourself, what's it been like these last few years where they've made this run, gotten so close with the Astros and the Red Sox? What's it like being so close as a fan and the success that they've had these last few years?
Well, especially for the home games and the amount of home games that they have won at Dodger Stadium is staggering. There would be times where I would leave the stadium when they won so many in a row, or 24 out of 28 or something like that at home. And I would say to myself, okay, it's okay for them to lose. I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. But it was an astounding run of playing well at home and all the different players contributing. Like this past year, the rookies came through and did all the walk-off
Yeah,
mania.
like
Will Smith.
three different rookies on
Sure.
two different games.
Oh, that's another head shaker. That's
Right.
something where it's not supposed to happen, and you get to say to yourself, "I've never seen that happen at a baseball stadium," and it happened. So we're very fortunate that they've had wonderful teams playing at home and playing on the road, and winning their divisions and coming up short for different reasons what we won't get into, but
We've gotten into that.
Yeah.
That's been half of our podcast.
I bet you have.
That team over there that was not going to be mentioned. They're a bad word right now for us. So
I just want to confirm you didn't hear any banging trash cans at Dodger Stadium.
I did not. No banging trash cans.
that's because you had headphones on, so you might have been muffled. So I don't think you were listening clearly.
I actually wear a single muff so I can have an open ear. So I actually listen for the trash cans. I'm kidding, of course. Or are listening to Joe and Oral or Rick Krajewski, our stat guy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate. I think we'll wrap it up here. We appreciate having you on. Now, I guess you could say you saw Vin for all these years. You saw us, so you've seen the full spectrum: the great and the terrible.
No, it was good to talk to you, both of you, and keep up the good work and keep talking. And because that's what announcers do, they talk.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. We're a work in progress, but we really appreciate your time, Boyd. It was interesting to hear a lot of your take on that side of baseball.
Thank you, Tyler. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, Boyd.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.